In the blistering heat of the Arizona Territory, 1887, where the sun scorched the earth like an unrelenting forge and the wind whispered secrets of survival through the canyons, a lone woman named Eliza Hawthorne clutched her swollen ankle as she staggered across the parched ranch land. Her dress, tattered from years of toil, dragged in the red dust, and each step sent waves of agony ripping through her body, the swelling ballooning faster than she could comprehend, turning her flesh into a grotesque, pulsating mass that threatened to consume her from within. She had been out mending fences when the rattlesnake struck, its fangs sinking deep into her calf like a betrayal from the very land she called home, and now, miles from the nearest town, with no one but the coyotes to hear her cries, Eliza collapsed to her knees, her vision blurring as the venom coursed through her veins, whispering promises of an agonizing end under the vast, indifferent sky. If this tale of raw human resilience and unexpected mercy already tugs at your heartstrings, and if you believe in the power of kindness and second chances in a world that often seems unforgiving, then please hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your own story of survival, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of hope, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts for more stories that celebrate the gentle side of the soul, because every act of compassion starts with one small gesture. Eliza had come to this rugged frontier 5 years earlier, a wide-eyed bride from the bustling streets of Boston, drawn by the romantic letters of her husband, Thomas, a dreamer who saw gold in the dry soil and endless possibilities in the horizon. Together, they had carved out Hawthorne Ranch from nothing but scrub brush and determination, building a modest homestead with a barn for their few cattle and horses, a vegetable patch that fought valiantly against the drought, and a cabin that echoed with laughter in the early days. But the Wild West was a cruel teacher, stripping away illusions one hardship at a time. First came the locust swarms that devoured their crops, then the brutal winter that claimed half their livestock, and finally, the fever that swept through the territory like a silent reaper, taking Thomas in the night and leaving Eliza a widow at 28, her dreams shattered like fragile glass under a boot heel. She could have fled back east, to the comfort of family and society, but something fierce had taken root in her during those years, a stubborn resolve forged in the isolation, making her vow to hold on to the ranch, to prove that a woman alone could tame this wild land, even as neighbors whispered doubts and outlaws eyed her vulnerability from afar. The days blurred into a relentless grind after Thomas's death, with Eliza rising before dawn to tend the animals, repair what broke under the elements, and barter in town for supplies, her hands calloused and her heart armored against the loneliness that gnawed at her like hunger. She learned to shoot straight, to track water sources in the arroyos, and to read the sky for storms that could flood the canyons in minutes, but nothing prepared her for the solitude that amplified every fear, every regret, turning quiet evenings into battles against the ghosts of what might have been. Children had been part of their plan, little ones to fill the cabin with joy, but fate had denied them that, and now, as the swelling in her leg pulsed with fiery intensity, Eliza wondered if this was her punishment for daring to defy the odds, for clinging to a life that demanded more than she had left to give. The pain sharpened her thoughts, flashing memories of Thomas's gentle touch, his stories by the fire about outlaws reformed and second chances seized, and she pressed on, crawling now toward the distant outline of her cabin, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows that seemed to mock her frailty. Miles away, on the fringes of the territory, rode a man known only as Jack Colton, a rancher with a reputation as shadowed as the mesas at dusk, a former gunslinger who had hung up his pistols after a bloody shootout in Tombstone left him scarred and seeking redemption in the quiet life of herding cattle across open ranges. Jack was no stranger to the unthinkable. He had seen men die for gold, women weep over lost loves, and the land itself swallow the weak without mercy. His own past was a tapestry of regrets. Orphaned young, he had fallen in with a gang of rustlers, pulling triggers for survival until the weight of blood on his hands drove him to vanish into the wilderness, reinventing himself as a solitary rancher with a small spread neighboring Hawthorne Ranch, though he kept his distance, wary of entanglements that could unearth old demons. Folks in town spoke of him in hushed tones, calling him cold, unbreakable, a man who did the unthinkable by walking away from violence, but Jack carried a hidden softness, a flicker of humanity buried under layers of dust and distrust, nurtured by the memory of a sister lost to the frontier's harshness years ago. As fate wove its intricate threads that fateful afternoon, Jack was driving a stray calf back to his herd when he spotted a figure in the distance, crumpled against the earth like a discarded rag doll. Curiosity pulled him closer, his horse's hooves kicking up dust clouds that billowed like smoke signals, and as he neared, recognition dawned. Eliza Hawthorne, the widow who ran her ranch with a defiance that both intrigued and unsettled him. He had glimpsed her in town once or twice, her chin held high amid the stares, and something about her spirit reminded him of his sister, stirring emotions he thought long dead. Dismounting swiftly, Jack approached with caution, his voice lost to the wind as he called out, but Eliza, delirious from the venom, could only murmur incoherently, her leg now grotesquely inflated, the skin stretched taut and discolored, veins bulging like rivers on a map of suffering. The bite marks were evident, 2 puncture wounds weeping poison, and Jack knew time was a thief here. The swelling was advancing fast, threatening to seal her fate if he didn't act. In that moment, under the vast canopy of the fading sky, Jack faced a choice that would redefine the unthinkable for them both. Society's rules screamed against it, a man like him, touching a woman in such intimacy, pulling up her dress to expose the wound, in a land where reputations were as fragile as morning dew, but hesitation meant death, and something deeper than propriety surged within him, a compulsion born of his own haunted past, urging him to save what he could in this unforgiving world. With steady hands, he knelt beside her, gently lifting the hem of her dress to reveal the ravaged leg, the swelling a monstrous testament to nature's cruelty, and without a second thought, he drew his knife, the blade glinting like a promise. The unthinkable unfolded not in violence, but in mercy. He sliced into the flesh around the bite, drawing out the venom with his own mouth, sucking the poison and spitting it into the dirt, over and over, his lips burning from the toxin as he fought to pull death from her veins, his actions a raw, desperate bid to grant her the second chance he had once clawed for himself. The procedure was agony for them both, Eliza's body convulsing in waves of pain that blurred the line between consciousness and oblivion, her mind drifting to visions of Thomas, of unborn children, of a life unlived, while Jack persisted, his resolve unbreakable, drawing on the survival skills honed in his outlaw days to staunch the flow and bind the wound with strips torn from his own shirt. Hours stretched into eternity as he carried her back to his horse, cradling her like fragile cargo, and rode through the gathering twilight to her cabin, where he tended her through the feverish night, cooling her brow with water from the well and whispering tales of redemption to chase away her deliriums. The swelling subsided slowly, a reluctant retreat, but with it came the dawn of change. Eliza awoke to find not just her life spared, but her isolation pierced by this unlikely savior, a man whose unthinkable act had bridged the chasm between their worlds. As days turned to weeks, the ranch began to heal alongside Eliza, with Jack returning not out of obligation, but a budding connection that softened the edges of their hardships. He helped mend fences, shared knowledge of the land that eased her burdens, and in quiet moments by the fire, their stories intertwined, her grief for Thomas mirroring his loss of kin, their struggles forging a bond stronger than the canyons, stone. The Wild West, with its endless trials, had taught them both that survival demanded more than strength. It required vulnerability, the courage to accept help, and the grace to offer it without expectation. Eliza's ranch flourished under their combined efforts, the cattle multiplying, the crops yielding, and in time, whispers in town shifted from doubt to admiration, tales of the widow and the reformed rancher becoming legends of second chances seized amid the dust. Yet, the true transformation lay in their hearts, where walls crumbled like old adobe, allowing love to bloom in the arid soil, a quiet, profound affection that honored their pasts while embracing the future. Jack, once adrift in his solitude, found purpose in her eyes, and Eliza discovered that the unthinkable could be a gateway to renewal, turning swelling wounds into scars of triumph. Their story, etched into the territory's lore, reminded all who heard it that even in the harshest lands, mercy could swell faster than venom, kindness outpacing cruelty, leaving legacies of hope for generations to come. If this story of unexpected heroism and heartfelt redemption has touched your soul, stirring emotions that remind you of the beauty in human connection, then let your heart guide your fingers, smash that like button, share this with a friend who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts for more tales that heal and uplift. And before we part, I have a special request. In the comments below, share just one line about a time when an act of kindness changed your life. Your words could spark hope for someone else reading them.